Greek myths begin not with a person, but with a state, chaos, a kind of yawning gap or formless void. From this strangeness emerged earth, sky, sea, and many other forces that slowly shaped themselves into a recognizable world. Before Zeus or any of the Olympians existed, the stage for their drama had to be built. Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky, formed one of the earliest divine pairs. Together they produced towering children, the Titans, who would one day rule before being challenged by Zeus. But at the beginning, they were simply the broad earth and the lofty sky embracing each other around the young cosmos. Gaia and Uranus had many children, some noble and some frightening. The Titans were powerful and majestic, while the Cyclopes and Hecatonchires were stranger beings that Uranus feared. His fear and harsh treatment of these children planted seeds of resentment that would later bloom into rebellion. Uranus feared his more monstrous children and locked them away, trapping them inside Gaia's depths. This wounded Gaia, who loved all her offspring, and she began to plan against her own partner. In Greek myth, the cosmos itself starts with a conflict between fear and care, power and justice. Among the Titans, Gaia turned to Kronos, the youngest but shrewdest, to challenge Uranus. She gave him a special sickle and urged him to act when the sky descended to embrace the earth. Kronos agreed, becoming the first of several children who overthrow their fathers in these myths. When Uranus descended, Kronos struck with the sickle and overthrew his father, freeing his imprisoned siblings and ending one cosmic era. In the wake of this act, Kronos and the Titans became the new rulers, and the world entered a different order. But the myth also hints that violence against a parent brings its own dark legacy. With Uranus gone, Kronos took the throne and the Titans entered their age. Later poets imagined this as a golden age, a time when humans did not yet toil as they would under later gods. Yet beneath the surface of peace lay prophecy and fear that would keep Kronos restless. Just as Uranus once heard prophecies, Kronos was told that one of his own children would overthrow him. Remembering how he had treated his father, Kronos feared the same fate. Prophecy in Greek myth is not a simple prediction. It is a pressure that often pushes characters to do the very things that make it come true. To escape the prophecy, Kronos chose an extreme and horrifying solution. He swallowed each of his children at birth. Hera, Poseidon, Hades, Demeter, and Hestia were all taken into his belly instead of being allowed to grow. The myth uses this shocking image to show how fear of losing power can twist even a ruler of a golden age. Rhea wept for the children she could never raise, trapped inside Kronos. Turning to Gaia, she begged for help to save at least one child from the same fate. Together, Earth Mother and Goddess Mother began to weave a new plan, a plan that would eventually bring Zeus into the story. When Rhea was pregnant again, she decided this child would not be swallowed. She hid her labor and gave birth to Zeus in secret, far from Kronos' gaze. The youngest child of Kronos began life not in a palace, but as a hidden infant whose existence was already a dangerous secret. To trick Kronos, Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to him as if it were their newborn. Kronos, acting out of fearful habit, swallowed the bundle without looking closely. The trick bought Zeus time to grow, while the Titan unknowingly kept a rock where he believed a baby slept inside him. Meanwhile, the real Zeus was taken to Crete, where he was raised in a cave by nymphs and the goat Amalthea. To keep Kronos from hearing his cries, the curates danced in armor, clashing their shields and spears. Even as a baby, Zeus's life depended on clever noise and careful hiding. One story says that when Zeus accidentally broke one of Amalthea's horns, it became the famous horn of plenty, the cornucopia. From it flowed endless food and riches, symbolizing future prosperity under Zeus's rule. Even in childhood myths, Zeus is linked to abundance as well as storms. As he grew, Zeus became strong and fearless, used to climbing rocks, facing storms, and living close to the wild. While he was still young, he learned that he was not just another godling. He was the hidden heir meant to challenge Kronos. The cave of Crete was his secret school in courage and endurance. At some point, Zeus learned that his siblings were trapped inside Kronos, and that his father had swallowed them out of fear. Guided by Gaia and other advisors, He understood that his own safety depended on ending this cycle of violent rule. The knowledge turned him from a carefree youth into a planned rebel. Zeus could have stayed hidden, living a quiet life, but the myths insist he chose confrontation. The world could not change if Kronos remained on the throne, trapped in fear and prophecy. Zeus accepted the risk of facing his father, and began planning how to free his siblings. Before marching into open war, Zeus met with Rhea and Gaia to plan a quieter first move. If they could force Kronos to bring back the swallowed children, they would have allies as powerful as any titan. The rebellion would start not with a battle, but with a potion and a conversation. In some versions, Zeus comes to Kronos disguised as a cupbearer, serving the very ruler he plans to overthrow. He must hide his identity, act humble, and wait for the perfect moment to offer the special mixture that will change everything. The Titan's own pride makes him slow to suspect the danger. When Kronos drank the potion Gaia helped prepare, it forced him to disgorge what he had swallowed, first the stone, then Zeus's brothers and sisters. The children emerged fully grown, ready to take their place in the world and in the coming struggle. In one moment, Zeus turned a lonely rebellion into a family alliance. For the first time, Zeus stood face to face with his siblings as adults: Hera, Poseidon, Hades, Demeter, and Hestia. They had lost their childhoods inside Kronos, but they had not lost their power. Their reunion is one of the emotional cores of the myth, a family broken by fear finally brought together. The newly freed gods and goddesses now had to choose their allies. Some titans, especially those wronged by Uranus or cautious about Kronos, leaned toward Zeus. Others remained loyal to the old order. The coming conflict would divide entire generations of divine beings. Zeus also freed the Cyclopes and Hecatoncheires, whom Uranus and Kronos had imprisoned. In gratitude, the Cyclopes promised to forge weapons for the new gods, and the 100-handed giants pledged their staggering strength. By releasing the most feared beings, Zeus turned them into pillars of his own cause. In the Cyclops' forge, Zeus received 3 key gifts: thunder, lightning, and lightning bolt. They crafted the thunderbolt, a concentrated weapon and symbol of authority, placing storm and law into Zeus's hands. From then on, every flash in the sky could be seen as a sign of his will. The Cyclops also forged a trident for Poseidon and a helm of invisibility for Hades. Each weapon matched its owner's nature. The trident stirred seas and earthquakes, while the helm allowed Hades to vanish from the sight of gods and men. Together, the brothers now had tools that could rival any titan. With weapons and allies gathered, the first battles of the Titanomachy began. Zeus and his siblings launched attacks from mountain strongholds, while Kronos and loyal titans defended massive fortresses. The war quickly grew beyond a single skirmish into a conflict that shook mountains and churned seas. The Titanomachy is said to have lasted 10 years, a cosmic war spanning generations. Seasons turned, storms rose and fell, and the world itself felt the strain. The length of the war reminds listeners that changing an order of things, even for the gods, takes time and endurance. The Titans were not weak or foolish. They commanded huge forces and had centuries of experience ruling the cosmos. Even with Thunderbolt and Trident, Zeus and his allies had to fight hard for every advantage, facing opponents who genuinely believed they were defending the rightful order. When the Hecatoncheires entered the war fully, hurling boulder after boulder with their many arms, the balance began to shift. Their overwhelming strength shattered Titan defenses and broke lines that had held for years. Zeus's gamble in freeing them paid off at critical moments in the war. At last, the war focused on a final confrontation between Zeus and Kronos. Surrounding them, gods, titans, cyclopes, and Hecatoncheires clashed in a storm of power. The myth does not give every tactical detail. Instead, it tells us that thunder, stone, and will decided who would rule the cosmos. Zeus's thunderbolt became the symbol of the turning point. Each strike in the myth is less about a single blast and more about the idea that a new order has found its voice. When thunder echoed over the battlefield, it signaled that Zeus's claim to kingship was no longer just a hope, it was a force. Defeated titans were not simply destroyed. They were cast down, bound, or imprisoned in deep places like Tartarus. The myth imagines them still existing beneath the earth, under guard, ready to shake the ground with their anger. Their fall shows that old power does not disappear, it is confined and monitored. When the war ended, mountains were cracked, seas reshaped, and the sky felt different. Myths use this image to explain why the world seems both stable and scarred. The victory of Zeus brought peace, but it was a peace built on buried violence and carefully maintained boundaries. With the war over, Zeus and his siblings chose Mount Olympus as their home and seat of government. High above valleys and seas, it became the mythical center where divine decisions were made. Olympus is both a place and a symbol of the distance between gods and mortals. To divide the cosmos fairly, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades drew lots. Zeus received the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Earth and Olympus were shared, governed through a combination of their powers. In mythic terms, this lottery explains why different realms have different rulers but remain linked. Poseidon took his place as lord of the seas, earthquakes, and horses. Sailors would later pray to him for safe passage, and city builders feared his power to shake the ground. Zeus's rise did not erase other domains. It organized them under different specialists. Hades descended to rule the underworld, a place of shadows, judgment, and the continuation of souls. Unlike later images of pure horror, Greek myth often describes his realm as strict but orderly. Zeus's brother became a ruler of what lies beneath, not a rebel against the sky. The earth itself remained shared ground. Zeus watched from the sky, Poseidon from the sea, Hades from below, and countless other gods took interest in specific cities, fields, and mountains. The myth tells us that the world humans live in is crowded with overlapping divine attention. After the Titanomachy and the division of realms, Zeus was acknowledged as king of the gods. He did not rule alone, but he presided over councils, settled disputes, and held the thunderbolt as final symbol of authority. Hera, his sister and later his wife, became queen beside him. Zeus presided over councils where gods debated wars, marriages, and the fates of heroes. His job was not just to hurl lightning, but to maintain a kind of divine law. When gods disobeyed or mortals broke sacred oaths, Zeus was expected to respond. Hera, often remembered for jealousy in later myths, also represented the dignity of marriage and queenship. As Zeus's partner, she watched over both divine and royal households. Their complicated relationship reflected the tension between raw power and social expectation. Even Zeus did not control everything. The Fates' three mysterious figures who measured out life and destiny stood apart from his will. Myths sometimes show him negotiating with them, but rarely overruling them entirely. The king of gods still had to live within a larger structure of order. Zeus was especially concerned with guests and oaths. In Greek thought, mistreating a guest or breaking a sworn promise offended Zeus directly. He might send storms, punish families, or support heroes against corrupt kings. Thunder became not just weather, but a sound of moral commentary. In one story, some gods, led by Hera, rebel against Zeus and tie him up while he sleeps. They are frustrated with his rule and try to seize power, showing that even kinghood is not safe from plots. The myth ends with Zeus freed by a loyal ally and punishing the conspirators, reasserting his control. According to the story, a loyal figure frees Zeus, and he swiftly retakes control. The conspirators are punished but not always destroyed. Hera, for example, is hung from the sky with golden chains but later reconciled. The tale emphasizes that Zeus's rule can bend, but not easily break. Other myths show Zeus swallowing Metis, a goddess of wisdom, after a prophecy that her child might be too powerful. Later, he suffers a terrible headache, and Athena springs from his head fully armed. It is a strange story that turns the pattern of swallowing and birth into a symbol of thought and strategy. Over time, Zeus's image expanded beyond just storms and lightning. He became lord of law, protector of guests, punisher of perjury, and supporter of rightful kings. In Greek imagination, a world under Zeus was not always gentle, but it had rules and patterns, something firmer than the raw fear that guided Kronos. Even in the peaceful times of Zeus's rule, Greeks remembered the Titanomachy as a foundational struggle. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and sudden storms could be described as echoes of that ancient war. The message was clear. The current order is stable, but it sits on a history of upheaval. For ordinary Greeks, Zeus was not just a character in old stories. He was the god of the sky overhead, the one whose storms could bless or devastate crops, and whose favor kings requested in ceremonies. Altars to Zeus appeared in city centers, mountain peaks, and even at crossroads. Many sanctuaries to Zeus were placed on high places, like Mount Lycaon or other peaks. From there, worshippers felt closer to the sky and could watch storms roll across the land. The height of the shrine mirrored Zeus's role as an overseeing presence. To understand Zeus's will, Greeks might consult oracles, such as the rustling oaks at Dodona, or the more famous oracle at Delphi. Priests and priestesses interpreted signs, from thunder to bird flight, connecting everyday questions to the cosmic order Zeus was thought to oversee. When a traveler knocked on a door, the host had to consider that Zeus might be watching, or even visiting in disguise. Myths repeated the theme that kindness to strangers could be rewarded, while cruelty might bring divine punishment. Hospitality was thus not just polite, it was sacred. In councils and courts, kings and officials might swear oaths in Zeus's name. To lie under such an oath was to challenge the king of gods himself. Even powerful mortals acknowledged that their authority was set inside a larger framework of divine oversight. Athletic festivals like those at Olympia honored Zeus with races, wrestling, and other competitions. Winning athletes dedicated their victories to him, turning human excellence into offerings. The games tied physical skill, civic pride, and religious devotion into a single ritual. Parents and storytellers used tales of Zeus to explain sudden storms, unexpected good fortune, or harsh reversals of luck. These myths were not mere entertainment. They were tools for thinking about why good or bad things happen in a world that often feels unpredictable. Greek stories do not hide Zeus's flaws. He can be unjust, unfaithful, and quick to anger. This realism makes him feel less like a distant abstract principle, and more like a powerful, unpredictable ruler. For the Greeks, even the king of gods could be argued with, criticized, and questioned. After all the wars, rebellions, and storms, Zeus's long reign represents a kind of settled order. The Titans are contained, the realms divided, and the rules mostly clear. Yet the myths remind us that this order was built, not given, and that every order carries the memory of what it had to overcome. Zeus and Kronos both faced prophecies, fear, and the risk of losing power, but they responded differently. Kronos tried to swallow the future. Zeus tried to organize it. While both used force, Zeus is remembered as a ruler who, at least sometimes, turned fear into law, rather than endless panic. Greek kings often claimed a special relationship to Zeus, seeing themselves as his favorites or imitators. This idea strengthened their authority, but also held them to a standard. If they ruled like tyrants, Zeus might abandon them. Myth turned the cosmic story of rebellion and order into a lesson about politics on Earth. Many heroes in Greek myth, Heracles, Perseus, and others, operate under Zeus's watch. Sometimes he helps them directly. Other times he watches as they face challenges he has allowed or designed. Hero tales show Zeus testing courage and cleverness, not just punishing or rewarding blindly. Prometheus, who gave fire to humans, shows that not even Zeus can predict or control every gift. Zeus punishes him harshly in the myths, but the knowledge Prometheus brings cannot be taken back. The story hints that even the king of gods is playing a long, complicated game with freedom and progress. In one tale, Zeus sends a flood to wipe out a corrupt human generation, sparing only a righteous couple who will renew humankind. The story presents him as a judge who can reset the board when things go too wrong. At the same time, it shows that even Zeus chooses renewal over permanent destruction. Different cities and regions worshipped different versions of Zeus. Zeus of the marketplace, Zeus of the household, Zeus of the boundary stones. Each version emphasized a particular aspect of his character, tailoring the king of gods to local needs and concerns. When we look at Zeus's story as a whole, it becomes a map of how the Greeks imagined power: inherited, challenged, violent, negotiated, and finally stabilized. The drama between chaos, titans, and Olympians let them talk about change and continuity without writing history books. From painted vases to temple sculptures, Zeus appears again and again, seated on a throne, hurling a bolt, or standing calmly as a lawgiver. These images helped fix his identity in the minds of people who might never hear a full recitation of the myths. Art and story worked together to keep him present. When Greeks met other cultures, they sometimes equated Zeus with foreign sky gods, seeing in them shared traits of storm, kingship, and cosmic rule. In this way, Zeus became part of a wider conversation about what a chief god looks like across cultures. Though Zeus seems secure, myths remind us that his order is fragile. Giants may still challenge heaven, heroes may defy gods, and mortals may forget their obligations. The world of Zeus is not a frozen perfection, but an ongoing balancing act between power, justice, and change. Looking back, Zeus's story arcs from a hidden baby in a cave to the king on Olympus. Along the way, he avoids being swallowed, frees siblings and allies, wins a cosmic war, and learns to govern. The path is anything but easy or automatic, which is exactly why it fascinated ancient audiences. The Greeks used Zeus to think about storms, kings, hospitality, law, and even their own political struggles. A world with no Zeus would have needed some other way to picture the sky's power and society's rules. In inventing a king of gods, they were also inventing a language for talking about order and fear. Zeus's story suggests that power is rarely gained without conflict, and it never stays uncontested for long. Rulers must manage fear, loyalty, and justice, or risk becoming another Kronos. The myth doesn't offer a perfect blueprint, but it does offer warnings. Zeus's father feared prophecy and tried to stop the future by swallowing it. Zeus also feared challenges but chose to build alliances and institutions instead. The stories invite listeners to ask, what do we do when we are afraid of change? Do we try to consume it, or reshape it? Today, Zeus appears in movies, games, and novels as a figure of spectacle, sometimes heroic, sometimes comic. Yet behind the special effects, the old questions remain. Who should rule? What makes power legitimate? And how do we live under forces we cannot fully control? Zeus belongs to a wider family of stories where younger gods overthrow older ones. Chaos is tamed, and the world is divided into stable regions. Comparing him to deities from other cultures helps us see patterns in how humans imagine the birth of order from confusion. Myths about Zeus do not tell us exactly how to run a modern world, but they do show how ancient people wrestled with the problem of power. By treating them as stories to think with, rather than commands to obey, we can learn from them without copying their every move. Even if we no longer believe in Zeus as a literal sky god, his story still feels big because it deals with big things: family conflict, change of regimes, justice, fear, and hope. A baby hidden in a cave grows up to reshape the universe, an image that never quite stops resonating. Our chibi-sized Zeus may look cute, but the ideas around him are huge. Using small characters to tell big stories lets us approach heavy themes: violence, fear, justice, in a way that is safe, thoughtful, and even playful. Tiny gods can help us talk about things that might feel overwhelming at full size. Our tiny storytellers remind us that Zeus's rise from hidden child to king of the gods is about more than thunderbolts. It is about how orders rise and fall, how fear can twist power, and how alliances and rules can turn chaos into something livable. By following his story, we glimpse how ancient minds tried to understand a universe that feels huge, complicated, and sometimes unfair.